Tonight, the Atlantic Ocean holds its breath above secrets that have slumbered for 12,000 years. Its dark waters cradling the dreams of a civilization that once touched the stars before sinking beneath waves of divine judgment. Feel the weight of millennia pressing down through fathoms of salt and mystery, where marble columns stand sentinel in eternal darkness, their carved surfaces telling stories that history has chosen to forget. If this journey touches your soul, join us again and whisper from where you listen to us. Now let the light dim. Breathe deeply. Let us dream with memories of empire that the sea has claimed. I stand on the deck of the research vessel Poseidon's Quest, watching the sun sink toward the horizon like a golden coin dropped into the ocean's vast treasury. The year is 2024, but I am sailing toward a discovery that will bridge the gap between myth and reality, between Plato's philosophical allegory and archaeological truth. Somewhere beneath these rolling swells lies the answer to humanity's most enduring mystery. The expedition team gathers around me as twilight paints the sky in shades of amber and rose. Dr. Elena Vasquez, our marine archaeologist, checks her equipment with the methodical precision of someone who has spent decades coaxing secrets from the seafloor. Her weathered hands, scarred by years of handling ancient artifacts, adjusts the controls of sonar systems that can peer through miles of water to map the contours of the ocean bottom. The coordinates match Plato's descriptions with unsettling accuracy, she murmurs, her voice carrying the excitement of a scholar who has spent her career chasing shadows and may finally have found substance. 9,000 years before Solon's time, beyond the Pillars of Hercules, in waters deep enough to swallow mountains. If Atlantis exists, we're sailing directly toward it. The Atlantic stretches endlessly in all directions, its surface deceptively calm, despite the profound depths that lie beneath. This is not the shallow Mediterranean where ancient civilizations left their traces in accessible waters, but the true ocean, where the seafloor plunges to abyssal depths that crush submarines and challenge the limits of human exploration. I feel the weight of history pressing down through the water column. Each meter of depth represents centuries of accumulated sediment, layers of time that have buried whatever truths lie below. The ocean is a jealous keeper of secrets, preserving what it claims with the same relentless patience that it uses to erode coastlines and reshape continents. The ship's sonar array extends beneath the hull like electronic tentacles, sending pulses of sound into the depths and listening for echoes that might reveal artificial structures hidden beneath millennia of marine sediment. Each ping carries the hopes of explorers who have dreamed of this moment, the possibility that legend might finally yield to scientific investigation. Captain Marcus Rodriguez adjusts our heading based on the latest bathymetric data, his experienced eyes reading the ocean's moods with the intuition of someone who has spent his life navigating these waters. The seafloor here is unlike anything I've seen, he observes, studying the sonar displays that show impossible geometries rising from the abyssal plain. These aren't natural formations. They're too regular, too purposeful.
The legend of Atlantis has haunted human imagination for more than 2 millennia. inspiring countless expeditions, theories, and dreams. Plato's account, preserved in his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, describes a maritime empire of unprecedented power and sophistication, a civilization that mastered both technology and philosophy before falling victim to its own hubris and the wrath of the gods. But what if Plato's story was not allegory but history? What if the philosopher was preserving genuine memories of a lost civilization, passed down through Egyptian priests who maintained records stretching back to the dawn of human civilization? The possibility has driven explorers to search every ocean, every inland sea, every possible location where such an empire might have flourished and fallen. The research vessel carries equipment that would have seemed magical to earlier generations of Atlantis seekers. Side-scan sonar that can map the seafloor with photographic precision. Remotely operated vehicles that can descend to crushing depths. Submersibles that can carry human observers into the abyss itself. If Atlantis exists, modern technology finally possesses the tools to find it. Dr. James Morrison, our geologist, examines core samples taken from the seafloor, looking for evidence of the catastrophic event that Plato claimed destroyed Atlantis in a single day and night. The sediment layers tell a story of massive upheaval, he explains, pointing to distinct strata that mark periods of violent geological activity. Something extraordinary happened here, something that left scars in the earth itself. The crew works with the quiet intensity of people who understand they may be on the verge of the greatest archaeological discovery in human history. Every sonar reading is analyzed, every anomaly investigated, every piece of data scrutinized for clues that might lead to the ultimate prize, proof that Atlantis was real, that human civilization is older and more sophisticated than orthodox archaeology admits. As night falls over the Atlantic, the stars emerge in patterns that ancient navigators used to guide their vessels across trackless waters. These same constellations witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, the birth and death of empires, the eternal cycle of human ambition and divine judgment that Plato claimed destroyed the greatest civilization the world had ever known. The ocean beneath us holds its secrets close, but modern science has tools that can penetrate even the deepest mysteries. Tomorrow, we will send our electronic eyes into the abyss, searching for traces of marble and bronze, of harbors and temples, of the concentric circles that Plato described with such precise detail that they seem more like architectural plans than philosophical metaphor. The legend of Atlantis represents more than just a lost city. It embodies humanity's deepest fears and highest aspirations, our terror of divine judgment, and our dream of perfect civilization. Whether we find ruins or empty seafloor, the search itself reveals something profound about the human spirit, our refusal to accept that some mysteries must remain forever unsolved. The research vessel cuts through dark waters towards coordinates that may hold the answer to history's greatest question, carrying with it the hopes and dreams of everyone who has ever wondered whether paradise once existed on Earth, and whether its memory might still lie waiting in the depths, preserved by the same ocean that claimed it so long ago.
The ancient papyrus crackles beneath my fingertips as I sit in the reconstructed library of Alexandria, surrounded by scrolls that preserve the wisdom of ages, and the testimonies of those who claim to remember what the world has forgotten. The year could be 590 BCE, and I am Solon the lawgiver, listening with growing amazement as Egyptian priests unfold a tale that will echo through millennia, challenging everything I thought I knew about the antiquity of human civilization. The priest Saunchus adjusts his linen robes, his weathered face bearing the gravity of one who serves as keeper of memories that stretch back to the dawn of recorded time. His voice carries the weight of centuries as he speaks of events that occurred when the pyramids were already ancient, when the Sphinx gazed across sands that had witnessed the rise and fall of empires whose names are now lost to all but the most sacred records. "You Greeks are but children," he says, his words gentle but firm, "always beginning the world anew in your minds, knowing nothing of what happened in ancient times, either in your own country or in ours. The reason is that there have been many destructions of mankind, auto of many causes, the greatest having been brought about by fire and flood." I lean forward, captivated by the implications of his words. The priests of Sais possess records that dwarf the memory of any Greek city-state, chronicles that speak of civilizations that flourished when my ancestors were still learning to work bronze. Their temple archives contain accounts of events that occurred 9,000 years before my birth, preserved in hieroglyphic script that captures not just names and dates, but the living memory of a world transformed by catastrophe. The priest unrolls a papyrus covered with hieroglyphs that dance in the lamplight like tiny figures frozen in eternal motion. "Here is written the account of the greatest naval power that ever existed," he continues, his finger tracing symbols that encode memories of maritime empire and technological wonder. "This power came forth out of the Atlantic Ocean, from an island larger than Libya and Asia combined, and from it there was passage to other islands, and from these islands to the whole of the opposite continent, which surrounded the true ocean." The description that follows challenges every assumption about the ancient world. Atlantis, as the Greeks would later name it, was not merely a city, but a confederation of islands and territories that controlled sea routes across the Atlantic Ocean. Its influence extended from the Mediterranean to the Americas, creating a maritime network that connected continents in ways that Orthodox history claims were impossible until the age of exploration. The island was the way to other islands, and from these you might pass to the whole of the opposite continent which surrounded the true ocean, Saunchus explains, his voice taking on the rhythmic cadence of oral tradition. "For this sea which is within the Straits of Heracles is only a harbor, having a narrow entrance, but that other is a real sea, and the surrounding land may be most truly called a boundless continent." I struggled to comprehend the implications of what I'm hearing. The priest speaks of geographical knowledge that suggests ancient civilizations possessed understanding of global geography that wouldn't be officially rediscovered until Columbus and Magellan. The true ocean beyond the Mediterranean, the boundless continent that surrounds it, these descriptions seem to reference the Atlantic Ocean and the Americas with startling accuracy. The account continues with details that seem too specific for mere allegory. Atlantis was arranged in concentric circles of land and water, with the royal palace at the center, surrounded by rings of harbors and canals. The island possessed abundant natural resources: gold, silver, copper, and the mysterious metal orichalcum that was valued above all others save gold itself. The whole country was said to be very lofty and precipitous on the side of the sea, the priest recounts, reading from records that preserve architectural and geographical details with the precision of a surveyor's report. But the country immediately about and surrounding the city was a level plain, itself surrounded by mountains which descended towards the sea. This plain was smooth and even, and of an oblong shape, extending in one direction 3,000 stadia, and going up the country from the sea through the center of the island 2,000 stadia. The mathematical precision of these measurements strikes me as significant. 3,000 stadia by 2,000 stadia describes an island of substantial size, large enough to support the population and resources necessary for a major maritime empire. These are not the vague dimensions of myth, but the specific measurements of geographical reality. The priest describes the Atlantean civilization with details that speak of advanced engineering and sophisticated social organization. They constructed harbors that could accommodate the largest vessels, built bridges across the circular canals, and created a network of underground passages that connected different parts of the city. Their temples were covered with silver and gold, their palaces adorned with precious metals and ivory. They had such an amount of wealth as was never before possessed by kings and potentates, Sanchez continues, his voice filled with wonder at the magnificence he describes. And they were furnished with everything which they needed, both in the city and country. For because of the greatness of their empire, many things were brought to them from foreign countries, and the island itself provided most of what was required by them for the uses of life. But the account takes a darker turn as the priest describes the moral decline that preceded Atlantis' destruction. The Atlanteans, initially noble and virtuous, gradually became corrupted by their wealth and power. They began to wage aggressive wars against their neighbors, attempting to enslave the peoples of the Mediterranean and establish dominion over the known world. When the god of gods, Zeus, who rules according to law, perceived that an honorable race was in a woeful plight, he collected all the gods into their most holy habitation, which, being placed in the center of the world, beholds all created things. And when he had called them together, he spake as follows. The papyrus breaks off at this crucial moment, leaving the divine judgment unrecorded, but its consequences clear. In a single day and night of misfortune, the island of Atlantis disappeared into the depths of the sea, taking with it all traces of the greatest civilization the world had ever known. As I absorb the implications of this testimony, I understand that I have been entrusted with more than just a story. I have been given the responsibility of preserving memories that connect the present to a past more ancient and magnificent than anyone imagines. The priests of Egypt have shared with me the account of humanity's greatest achievement and most catastrophic failure, a tale that will challenge future generations to reconsider everything they think they know about the antiquity and sophistication of human civilization. The research vessel Poseidon's Quest cuts through the pre-dawn darkness like a blade through black silk, her hull vibrating with the purposeful energy of a ship carrying humanity's oldest dream toward its possible fulfillment. I stand on the bridge beside Captain Rodriguez as he adjusts our heading based on the latest satellite positioning data, watching the GPS coordinates tick closer to the target zone where ancient legend and modern science will finally meet. The expedition team moves with the quiet efficiency of professionals who understand they may be hours away from the greatest archaeological discovery in human history. Dr. Elena Vazquez checks her underwater cameras for the third time, her movements betraying the nervous excitement of someone who has spent decades preparing for this moment. The submersible Narrated sits secured on the aft deck, its titanium hull gleaming under the ship's floodlights like a mechanical whale ready to dive into the abyss. Sonar contact, bearing 270 degrees, calls out Lieutenant Sarah Chen from the navigation station, her voice cutting through the bridge's concentrated silence. Range 4,000 meters and closing. The anomaly is massive, geometric patterns extending across several square kilometers of seafloor. I move to the sonar display, watching as electronic pulses paint a picture of the ocean bottom that defies natural explanation. The seafloor here should be a relatively flat abyssal plain covered with millennia of accumulated sediment. Instead, the sonar reveals structures that rise from the depths in patterns too regular, too purposeful to be anything but artificial. Dr. Morrison, our marine geologist, studies the bathymetric data with growing amazement. These formations are arranged in concentric circles, he observes, his finger tracing the sonar returns that show rings of elevated terrain separated by what appear to be channels or canals. The largest circle has a diameter of approximately 15 kilometers, exactly matching Plato's description of Atlantis's outer harbor. The implications send a thrill through the expedition team. For more than 2 millennia, scholars have debated whether Plato's account was historical fact or philosophical allegory. The precise measurements he provided, the dimensions of the circular city, the distances between harbors, the size of the central island, seemed too specific for fiction, yet too fantastic for reality. Now, sonar technology has revealed structures on the Atlantic seafloor that match those ancient descriptions with unsettling accuracy. Captain Rodriguez reduces speed as we approach the target coordinates, the ship's engines settling into the steady rhythm that will maintain our position above the anomaly. Depth here is 3,800 meters, he reports, consulting the navigation displays. Well within the operational limits of our deep-sea equipment, but will need perfect weather conditions for the dive. The Atlantic cooperates with unusual calm, its surface barely disturbed by the gentle swells that rock the research vessel. Dr. Vazquez interprets this as a favorable omen, though she's too much of a scientist to admit such superstitions aloud. The ocean has been jealously guarding its secrets for 12,000 years. Perhaps it's finally ready to reveal what it has preserved in its deepest vaults. The side-scan sonar provides increasingly detailed images as we pass over the anomaly, revealing structures that challenge every assumption about ancient capabilities. What appears to be a massive harbor complex extends across the seafloor, with stone quays and breakwaters that could have accommodated the largest vessels of any era. The engineering required for such construction would have been extraordinary even by modern standards. "Look at this," Dr. Vazquez calls out, pointing to sonar returns that show what appears to be a series of stepped pyramids arranged around a central plaza. The symmetry is perfect. These structures were planned and built according to sophisticated architectural principles. This isn't some natural formation that happens to look artificial. This is a city.
The remotely operated vehicle, Triton, is prepared for its preliminary reconnaissance dive.
its cameras and sampling equipment checked and rechecked by technicians who understand the historical significance of what they're about to document. The ROV will serve as our electronic scout, descending to depths where human divers cannot survive, to provide the first close-up images of structures that may prove Atlantis was real. I watch the deployment process with the fascination of someone witnessing history in the making. The ROV disappears beneath the surface, trailing its fiber-optic umbilical, beginning a descent that will take it through 3 miles of water to reach the seafloor. The journey will require nearly 2 hours, time that passes with agonizing slowness as the expedition team monitors the vehicle's progress through the crushing depths. The water column tells its own story as the ROV descends. The first 1,000 meters pass through the sunlit zone where marine life flourishes, then into the twilight depths where bioluminescent creatures create their own constellations in the eternal darkness. Below 2,000 meters, the ROV enters the abyssal zone, where pressure reaches crushing levels and temperatures hover just above freezing. ROV approaching the seafloor, reports the pilot, his eyes fixed on the control monitors that show the vehicle's depth and position. Visibility is limited due to sediment suspension, but we're getting clear sonar returns from the target structures, switching to high-intensity lighting for visual contact. The first images from the seafloor appear on the expedition's monitors like windows into an impossible past. The ROV's lights illuminate carved stone blocks covered with marine growth, their surfaces bearing inscriptions in scripts that no living scholar can read. These are not natural rock formations, but worked stone, cut and fitted with precision that speaks of advanced engineering knowledge. Dr. Vasquez leans forward, her breath fogging the monitor screen, as she studies the images with the intensity of someone who has dreamed of this moment throughout her career. "The stonework is extraordinary," she whispers, her voice filled with awe. "Look at the joint lines. These blocks were cut to tolerances that rival modern construction techniques. And the size of some of these stones, they must weigh hundreds of tons." The ROV moves through what appears to be a vast underwater plaza, its cameras revealing architectural details that match Plato's descriptions with startling accuracy. Circular arrangements of columns, stepped platforms that may have supported temples or palaces, and, most remarkably, the remains of what appears to be a sophisticated harbor system with stone quays and protective breakwaters. "We need to get human eyes down there," Dr. Vasquez declares, her scientific caution overwhelmed by the magnitude of what the ROV has revealed. The submersible dive is no longer just exploration. It's confirmation of the greatest archaeological discovery in human history. The research vessel maintains its position above the anomaly as the team prepares for the manned descent that either validate humanity's oldest legend or reveal the most elaborate natural deception the ocean has ever created. Either way, the expedition has already succeeded in one crucial respect. It has transformed Atlantis from myth into measurable reality, from philosophical allegory into archaeological investigation. The abyss waits patiently below, holding its secrets in the crushing darkness, where human ambition once built monuments to immortality, only to learn that even the greatest civilizations are subject to the inexorable judgment of time and tide.
The sonar screen pulses with electronic heartbeats as sound waves penetrate the Atlantic's deepest secrets, each ping returning with echoes that paint impossible geometries on our monitors. I stand transfixed in the research vessel's sonar room, watching as three-dimensional images emerge from the data stream, like digital ghosts materializing from the abyss. The patterns we're seeing shouldn't exist. Not here, not at these depths, not with this level of geometric precision. Dr. Sarah Kim, our sonar specialist, adjusts the frequency parameters with the delicate touch of a musician tuning an instrument. Her 15 years of mapping ocean floors have never prepared her for readings like these. The acoustic returns are showing structures with right angles and parallel lines, she explains, her voice tight with controlled excitement. Natural geological formations don't create patterns this regular. We're looking at architecture. The high-resolution sonar array reveals details that grow more astounding with each sweep. What initially appeared as random seafloor irregularities now resolves into a vast urban complex arranged in the concentric circles that Plato described with such precise detail. The outer ring measures exactly 15 kilometers in diameter, with inner circles of progressively smaller size, each separated by what appear to be water channels now filled with sediment. I trace the patterns on the display screen, my finger following lines that represent walls, streets, and structures buried beneath 12,000 years of marine deposits. The central island, according to the sonar data, rises nearly 200 meters above the surrounding seafloor, an artificial mountain crowned with what can only be described as a palace complex of staggering proportions. Look at this harbor system, Dr. Kim continues, highlighting sonar returns that show massive stone breakwaters extending into what was once open water. These aren't crude stone piles, but engineered structures designed to protect shipping from Atlantic storms. The entrance channel is precisely aligned with the prevailing currents, demonstrating sophisticated understanding of marine engineering. The sonar penetration capabilities reveal layers of construction that speak of a civilization that built and rebuilt over centuries. Beneath the visible structures lie older foundations, suggesting that Atlantis grew and evolved over time, rather than appearing fully formed. The archaeological implications are staggering. We're looking at evidence of urban development that predates any known civilization by millennia. Lieutenant Chen calls out coordinates as she plots the extent of the anomaly. The complex extends across 47 square kilometers of seafloor, she reports, her voice betraying amazement at the scale of what we've discovered. This isn't just a city, it's a metropolitan area comparable to ancient Rome at its peak. The side-scan sonar reveals details that challenge every assumption about ancient capabilities.
Road networks connect different sections of the city in geometric patterns that suggest sophisticated urban planning. What appear to be aqueduct systems snake through the ruins, their stone channels still visible despite millennia of marine erosion. Most remarkably, the sonar detects what can only be described as a subway system, underground tunnels that connect major structures across the urban complex. Dr. Morrison studies the geological data with growing fascination. The seafloor here shows clear evidence of catastrophic subsidence, he observes, pointing to sediment layers that tell the story of Atlantis's final hours. Something caused this entire region to drop nearly 4,000 meters in a very short period, possibly a single seismic event. The sonar array's deep penetration mode reveals structures buried beneath layers of sediment that would normally require extensive excavation to uncover. We can see the outlines of buildings, the geometric patterns of streets and plazas, even what appear to be individual rooms within larger structures. It's like having X-ray vision that can peer through millennia of accumulated debris to reveal the bones of a lost civilization.
The acoustic signature of these materials is unusual, Dr. Kim notes, studying spectral analysis data that shows how different substances reflect sonar waves. Some of these structures appear to be made from materials we can't identify, metals or alloys that don't match anything in our database. The acoustic properties suggest something denser than bronze, but lighter than iron. The mysterious material readings correspond to areas where Plato claimed the Atlanteans used orichalcum, the legendary metal that was supposedly more valuable than gold. Modern science has never identified a substance matching the ancient descriptions, leading most scholars to dismiss it as fictional. But the sonar data suggests materials with acoustic properties that don't match any known metals. I watch as the sonar builds a three-dimensional model of the underwater city, each sweep adding new details to our understanding of Atlantean architecture. The buildings show a distinctive style that combines massive stone construction with delicate decorative elements. Temples rise in stepped pyramids that dwarf anything built in Egypt or Mesopotamia, while residential areas show evidence of sophisticated urban planning with regular street grids and centralized water systems. The harbor complex alone represents an engineering achievement that would challenge modern construction techniques. The main breakwater extends nearly 5 kilometers into what was once the open ocean, constructed from stone blocks that the sonar indicates weigh hundreds of tons each. The precision of the construction is remarkable. The breakwater follows a perfect curve calculated to deflect wave energy while providing maximum protection for the harbor. We're detecting what appears to be a lighthouse or beacon tower on the outer breakwater, Dr. Kim reports, highlighting a sonar return that shows a cylindrical structure rising nearly 100 meters above the harbor floor. If this is what I think it is, it would have been visible from ships dozens of kilometers away, a navigation aid that could guide vessels safely into the harbor. The sonar data reveals evidence of the catastrophe that destroyed Atlantis with startling clarity. Collapsed buildings show the direction of seismic forces, while debris fields indicate the violence of the city's final moments. Some structures appear to have been toppled by earthquake, others show evidence of fire damage, and many seem to have been overwhelmed by massive tsunami waves that swept across the island.
The Central Palace complex presents the most intriguing sonar returns. The structure appears to be built around a series of courtyards arranged in geometric patterns that mirror celestial alignments. Underground chambers extend deep into the bedrock, their purpose unclear, but their construction obviously sophisticated. Some of these subterranean spaces show acoustic properties that suggest they may still contain air pockets, spaces that have remained sealed since the city's destruction. As the sonar completes its comprehensive survey, the full magnitude of our discovery becomes clear. We have found not just ruins, but an entire civilization preserved beneath the Atlantic, an urban complex that validates Plato's account in every significant detail. The concentric circles, the harbor systems, the scale of construction, all match the ancient descriptions with precision that transforms legend into archaeological reality. The electronic eyes of our sonar array have penetrated veils of time and water to reveal humanity's greatest lost civilization, waiting in the abyss for explorers brave enough to descend into its drowned streets and discover the secrets that 12,000 years of ocean burial have preserved in the crushing darkness of the deep. The submersible Nereid descends through layers of blue that grow progressively darker, each meter of depth carrying us further from the familiar world of sunlight and air toward a realm where human beings were never meant to venture. I sit in the pilot's seat beside Dr. Vasquez, watching the depth gauge climb steadily as we fall through 3 miles of crushing water toward the seafloor where Atlantis waits in eternal darkness. The titanium hull creaks softly around us, a reminder of the immense pressure building outside our protective shell. At this depth, the water pressure exceeds 300 atmospheres, enough to crush a human body instantly, to implode steel submarines, to reduce the strongest materials to twisted metal. Only the most advanced deep-sea technology allows us to survive in this alien environment, where the weight of the entire ocean presses down with relentless force. Passing through the thermocline at 800 meters, I report, noting the temperature drop as we leave the sun-warmed surface waters and enter the perpetual cold of the deep ocean. The submersible's lights create a small bubble of visibility in the vast darkness, illuminating marine snow, the constant drift of organic particles that falls like underwater precipitation through the water column. Dr. Vasquez checks her camera systems for the dozenth time, her hands trembling slightly with anticipation. 30 years I've been studying ancient civilizations, she murmurs, her voice barely audible above the hum of life support systems. 30 years of pottery shards and foundation stones, and now we're about to see an entire city that's been waiting for us in the darkness. The descent takes nearly 2 hours, a journey through oceanic layers that represent different worlds of marine life. We pass through the twilight zone, where bioluminescent creatures create their own constellations, then into the midnight zone, where only the most specialized organisms can survive. Below 2,000 meters, we enter the abyssal realm, where life exists in forms so alien they seem like visitors from another planet. Sonar contact with the seafloor, announces the submersible's navigation system. Range 500 meters and closing, switching to high-intensity lighting. The external floodlights pierce the darkness ahead, revealing the first glimpses of a landscape that has remained hidden since the last ice age. The seafloor appears gradually through the murk, covered with a fine layer of sediment that has accumulated over millennia. But as we descend the final 100 meters, artificial structures begin to emerge from the natural contours of the ocean bottom. What initially appears as random rock formations resolves into worked stone, carved blocks, the unmistakable geometry of human construction. "My God," Dr. Vasquez whispers, her face pressed against the porthole as the submersible's lights illuminate the first clear view of Atlantean architecture. "Look at the size of those stones. They must weigh hundreds of tons, yet they're fitted together with precision that would challenge modern construction techniques." I maneuver the submersible along what appears to be a massive stone wall, its surface covered with marine growth but still showing evidence of sophisticated masonry. The blocks are cut to perfect rectangles and fitted without mortar, held in place by their own weight and the precision of their construction. This is not primitive stonework, but advanced engineering that speaks of mathematical knowledge and sophisticated tools. The wall extends upward beyond the reach of our lights, disappearing into the darkness above, like a cliff face carved from living rock. Inscriptions are visible on some blocks, symbols and characters that no living scholar can read. A written language that died with the civilization that created it. The script appears to be both pictographic and phonetic, suggesting a level of linguistic sophistication that rivals any ancient writing system. "We're approaching what appears to be a gateway," I report, adjusting the submersible's trim as we navigate between massive stone pillars that once supported an entrance to the city. The pillars are carved with intricate reliefs showing figures in flowing robes, their faces serene despite 12,000 years of submersion. The artistry is extraordinary. These are not crude, primitive carvings, but sophisticated sculptures that rival the finest work of classical antiquity. Dr. Vasquez activates the external cameras, documenting every detail of our passage through the ancient gateway. "The preservation is remarkable," she observes, studying the images on her monitors. "The cold water and lack of oxygen have prevented decay that would have destroyed these structures in a terrestrial environment. It's like the ocean has been acting as a natural preservation chamber." Beyond the gateway, the submersible enters what can only be described as a street. A paved thoroughfare lined with the remains of buildings that once housed the citizens of Atlantis. The street is wide enough for multiple vehicles, with raised sidewalks and what appear to be drainage channels designed to handle runoff from the frequent rains that Plato described as characteristic of the island's climate. The buildings show evidence of sophisticated urban planning. Residential structures are arranged in regular blocks with standardized dimensions, while larger buildings, presumably temples or public structures, occupy prominent positions at street intersections. The architecture combines massive stone construction with delicate decorative elements, creating a distinctive style that is both monumental and elegant. "Look at this," Dr. Vasquez calls out, pointing to a structure that appears to be a fountain or public water feature. The carved stone basin is decorated with figures of sea creatures, dolphins, whales, and fish, rendered with artistic skill that captures both their physical form and their essential nature. Water channels carved into the stone show how the fountain once operated, fed by the sophisticated hydraulic systems that supplied the city. I pilot the submersible deeper into the urban complex, following streets that lead toward the city center, where sonar has detected the largest structures. The scale of construction becomes more impressive with each block we traverse. These are not the modest buildings of a primitive settlement, but the monumental architecture of a major civilization, a city designed to house hundreds of thousands of inhabitants in comfort and style. The submersible's lights illuminate details that speak of daily life in ancient Atlantis. Stone benches line the streets where citizens once gathered to conduct business or socialize. Public buildings show evidence of sophisticated ventilation systems, with air shafts and circulation channels that would have provided fresh air to interior spaces. Even the street paving shows evidence of advanced engineering, with stones cut to precise dimensions and laid in patterns that would have provided excellent drainage. "We're approaching the central plaza," I announce, consulting the navigation display that shows our position relative to the sonar map. The largest structures should be just ahead. The submersible emerges from the narrow street into an open space of breathtaking proportions, a circular plaza surrounded by buildings that dwarf anything we've seen so far. At the center of the plaza stands what can only be described as a temple, its stepped pyramid form rising into the darkness above our lights. The structure is covered with carvings that tell stories we can only guess at, scenes of daily life, religious ceremonies, and what appear to be astronomical observations. This is the heart of Atlantis, the sacred center of a civilization that once ruled the seas. The temple rises from the abyssal darkness like a mountain carved by gods, its stepped pyramid form ascending beyond the reach of our submersible's lights into the crushing blackness above. I hover the Nereid at a respectful distance, awed by the monumental scale of construction that dwarfs even the greatest achievements of Egypt or Mesopotamia. This is architecture designed not just to house the divine, but to proclaim the power and sophistication of the civilization that created it. Dr. Vasquez adjusts the external cameras to capture the temple's full magnificence, her breath fogging the porthole as she presses close to document every detail. "The proportions are mathematically perfect," she whispers, her voice filled with the reverence of someone witnessing the impossible made manifest. "Look at the relationship between the base width and the height. It follows the golden ratio with precision that suggests advanced understanding of geometric principles. The temple's surface is covered with reliefs that tell the story of Atlantean civilization in stone. Carved figures process up the pyramid sides in endless processions, carrying offerings to deities whose faces have been worn smooth by millennia of deep ocean currents. The artistry is extraordinary. These are not crude primitive carvings, but sophisticated sculptures that capture both physical form and spiritual essence with masterful skill. I maneuver the submersible closer to examine the temple's base, where massive stone blocks form a foundation that could support structures of almost unlimited height. Each block appears to weigh hundreds of tons, yet they are fitted together with joints so precise that no mortar was needed. The engineering required for such construction challenges every assumption about ancient capabilities. These aren't local stones, Dr. Vasquez observes, studying the geological composition visible in our lights. The mineral content suggests quarries hundreds of miles away. The Atlanteans must have possessed transportation capabilities that allowed them to move massive stone blocks across vast distances, engineering that rivals anything we can accomplish today. The temple's entrance is guarded by colossal statues that emerge from the seafloor like titans frozen in eternal vigilance. The figures are carved in a style that combines human and divine attributes, faces of serene beauty topped with elaborate headdresses that incorporate symbols of sun, moon, and stars. Their hands hold objects that might be scepters of authority or instruments of unknown purpose. As we circle the temple's base, the submersible's lights reveal additional structures that speak of the complex's original grandeur. Smaller temples and shrines surround the central pyramid, connected by raised walkways that once allowed priests and worshippers to move between different sacred spaces. The entire complex was designed as a unified architectural statement, a stone symphony that proclaimed the glory of Atlantean civilization. "Look at these columns," I call out, directing the submersible's lights toward a row of massive stone pillars that once supported a temple portico. Each column is carved from a single block of stone and decorated with spiraling reliefs that seem to tell astronomical stories. The capitals are carved in the form of stylized waves, as if the architects wanted to acknowledge the ocean that surrounded their island home. The preservation is remarkable, despite 12,000 years of submersion. The cold, oxygen-poor environment of the deep ocean has prevented the decay that would have destroyed these structures in a terrestrial setting. Marine growth covers many surfaces, but the underlying stonework remains intact, allowing us to see Atlantean architecture much as it appeared when the city was alive with human activity. Dr. Vasquez points to inscriptions carved into the temple walls, symbols and characters that represent the written language of a lost civilization. The script appears to be both pictographic and phonetic, she explains, documenting the inscriptions with high-resolution cameras. It's more sophisticated than early Egyptian hieroglyphs, suggesting a level of linguistic development that we didn't think existed in the ancient world. The temple complex extends far beyond what our lights can illuminate, disappearing into the darkness in all directions. Sonar readings suggest that the sacred precinct covers several square kilometers, with dozens of individual structures connected by a network of walkways, courtyards, and ceremonial spaces. This is not just a temple, but an entire religious city, a place where thousands of priests and pilgrims once gathered to worship the gods of Atlantis. I pilot the submersible around the temple's perimeter, following what appears to be a processional way marked by smaller shrines and monuments. The route is paved with stones that show evidence of sophisticated engineering, drainage channels, expansion joints, and surface textures designed to provide secure footing even in wet conditions. Every detail speaks of careful planning and masterful execution. The acoustic properties of this space must have been extraordinary, Dr. Vasquez observes, studying the temple's architectural features. The stepped pyramid form would have created natural amplification, allowing priests to address large crowds without artificial enhancement. The Atlanteans understood principles of acoustics that weren't formally developed until much later in human history. The submersible sonar reveals chambers within the temple structure, internal spaces that may have served as sanctuaries, treasure rooms, or burial chambers for Atlantean royalty. Some of these spaces appear to be sealed, their contents preserved in air pockets that have remained intact since the city's destruction. The possibility of finding undisturbed Atlantean artifacts sends a thrill of excitement through both of us. As we explore the temple complex, evidence of the catastrophe that destroyed Atlantis becomes increasingly apparent. Some structures show clear signs of earthquake damage, walls cracked by seismic forces, columns toppled by ground motion, roofs collapsed under the weight of falling debris. Other buildings appear to have been damaged by fire, their stone surfaces blackened by flames that burned during the city's final hours. "Look at this," I call out, directing the submersible's lights toward a section of the temple where massive stone blocks have been scattered like toys by some unimaginable force. The violence of the destruction is incredible. Whatever happened here wasn't gradual subsidence, but catastrophic collapse, exactly as Plato described. The temple's astronomical alignments become apparent as we study its orientation relative to the surrounding structures. The pyramid's faces are precisely aligned with cardinal directions, while smaller temples appear to be positioned to mark significant celestial events. This is architecture designed not just for worship, but for scientific observation, evidence that the Atlanteans possessed sophisticated understanding of astronomy and mathematics. Dr. Vasquez documents everything with the methodical precision of someone who understands the historical significance of what we're witnessing. "This changes everything we thought we knew about ancient civilizations," she says, her voice filled with the excitement of revolutionary discovery. The scale, the sophistication, the engineering capabilities. Atlantis wasn't just real, it was more advanced than any civilization we've previously discovered. The temple complex stands as eternal testimony to human ambition and divine judgment, its stone surfaces bearing witness to the rise and fall of the greatest civilization the ancient world ever knew. In its drowned halls and collapsed chambers lie the answers to questions that have haunted humanity for millennia, waiting for explorers brave enough to descend into the abyss and confront the truth. The submersible glides through what can only be described as the beating heart of Atlantis, a vast circular plaza that stretches beyond our lights in all directions, its geometric perfection preserved beneath millennia of crushing darkness. I adjust the narrated's position to hover above the plaza's center, where concentric rings of stone create patterns that match Plato's descriptions with startling precision. This is the sacred heart of the lost empire, the place where kings once ruled and gods were worshipped. Dr. Vasquez studies her instruments with growing amazement as the sonar reveals the plaza's full dimensions. The outer ring has a diameter of exactly 1 kilometer, she reports, her voice tight with controlled excitement. The inner circles decrease in size according to mathematical ratios that suggest sophisticated understanding of geometric principles. This isn't just urban planning, it's sacred geometry made manifest in stone. The plaza's surface is paved with massive stone blocks arranged in intricate patterns that create a mandala of breathtaking complexity. Each ring is separated from the others by channels that once carried water from the harbor to the city's center, creating a network of canals that served both practical and ceremonial purposes. The engineering required for such construction would challenge modern capabilities. I pilot the submersible along the outermost ring, following what appears to be a raised walkway that once allowed citizens to circumnavigate the plaza. The walkway is lined with statues, figures of kings, priests, and gods carved from stone that has survived 12,000 years of submersion with remarkable clarity. Each statue tells part of the story of Atlantean civilization, their faces bearing expressions of serene confidence that speaks of a people who believed their empire would last forever. "Look at these inscriptions," Dr. Vasquez calls out, pointing to carved panels that line the walkway between the statues. They appear to be historical records, lists of kings, accounts of military victories, descriptions of religious ceremonies. This is a stone library, a permanent record of Atlantean achievement, carved where all citizens could see and remember. The inscriptions are written in the mysterious Atlantean script that combines pictographic and phonetic elements in ways that suggest linguistic sophistication rivaling any ancient writing system. The characters are carved with precision that speaks of master craftsmen working with advanced tools. Their surfaces still sharp despite millennia of deep ocean exposure. As we move toward the plaza's center, the scale of construction becomes even more impressive. The inner rings are elevated above the outer ones, creating a series of terraces that rise toward the central island where the royal palace once stood. Each terrace is connected to the others by bridges and stairways carved from single blocks of stone, their surfaces decorated with reliefs that celebrate the glory of Atlantean civilization. The central island emerges from the plaza floor like an artificial mountain, its sides carved into terraces that once supported gardens, fountains, and ceremonial buildings. At its summit, the ruins of what can only be the royal palace spread across several acres, their broken walls and collapsed roofs bearing witness to the violence of Atlantis's final hours. The palace complex is enormous, I observe, studying the sonar readings that reveal the structure's full extent. It covers nearly 10 acres and appears to have contained hundreds of rooms. This wasn't just a residence, but an entire governmental complex, a place where the business of empire was conducted on a scale that rivals modern capitals. Dr. Vasquez directs the external cameras toward the palace ruins, documenting architectural details that speak of unimaginable wealth and sophistication. The walls are constructed from blocks of different colored stone, arranged in patterns that create geometric designs of stunning beauty. Gold leaf still clings to some surfaces, its metallic gleam undimmed by millennia of submersion. The throne room is identifiable by its size and the remains of what appears to be a massive stone chair carved from a single block of black marble. The throne is decorated with symbols of royal authority, crowns, scepters, and the mysterious orichalcum inlays that Plato described as more precious than gold. The metal has a distinctive reddish hue that doesn't match any known alloy. These aren't just decorative elements, Dr. Vasquez observes, studying the orichalcum inlays through the submersible's cameras. The metal appears to have been used for functional purposes as well. Electrical conductors, perhaps, or components of some unknown technology. The Atlanteans may have possessed metallurgical knowledge that we're only now beginning to understand. The palace's water features are particularly impressive, with fountains and pools that once created a paradise of flowing water in the heart of the royal complex. The hydraulic engineering required for such systems demonstrates sophisticated understanding of fluid dynamics and pressure relationships. Channels carved into the stone show how water was distributed throughout the palace, providing both practical utility and aesthetic beauty. As we explore the palace ruins, evidence of the catastrophe that destroyed Atlantis becomes increasingly apparent. Some walls show clear signs of earthquake damage, their massive stones cracked and displaced by seismic forces of unimaginable power. Other structures appear to have been damaged by fire, their surfaces blackened by flames that burned during the city's final hours. "Look at this," I call out, directing the submersible's lights toward a section of the palace where the floor has collapsed into what appears to be an underground chamber. There are spaces beneath the palace, vaults or storage rooms that may have survived the destruction intact. The underground chambers represent the most tantalizing possibility of our expedition. If any Atlantean artifacts have survived the city's destruction, they would most likely be found in sealed spaces, protected from the corrosive effects of seawater. The palace vaults may contain treasures, documents, or technological artifacts that could revolutionize our understanding of ancient capabilities. Dr. Vasquez studies the collapsed floor section with growing excitement. "The chamber appears to be sealed," she observes, noting how the collapsed stones have created a barrier that might have prevented seawater from entering the space below. If we could find a way to access that vault, we might discover Atlantean artifacts in perfect preservation. The plaza's outer rings contain evidence of the commercial and residential districts that once surrounded the royal center. Market areas are identifiable by their regular layout and the remains of what appear to be merchant stalls. Residential blocks show evidence of sophisticated urban planning, with standardized building dimensions and centralized utilities that speak of advanced civic organization. The harbor connections are still visible despite millennia of sedimentation. Channels that once carried ships from the outer harbor to the plaza's edge can be traced through the ruins, their stone-lined walls still intact beneath layers of marine sediment. The Atlanteans created a city where commerce and ceremony were seamlessly integrated, where ships could sail directly to the heart of the empire. As we complete our survey of the central plaza, the full magnitude of Atlantean achievement becomes clear.
This is not just a lost city, but the capital of a maritime empire that controlled trade routes across the Atlantic Ocean. The scale of construction, the sophistication of engineering, the evidence of advanced technology, all point to a civilization that was far more advanced than orthodox history admits possible. The plaza stands as eternal testimony to human ambition and the fragility of even the greatest achievements, its concentric circles preserving the memory of an empire that once ruled the seas but fell victim to forces beyond human control.
The submersible's lights illuminate objects that shouldn't exist. Artifacts crafted from materials that challenge every assumption about ancient metallurgy and technology. I maneuver the narrated carefully through the ruins of what appears to be a royal treasury, where scattered treasures lie among collapsed stone shelves like jewels spilled from a giant's collection. Each artifact tells a story of sophistication that pushes the boundaries of what we thought possible for ancient civilizations. Dr. Vasquez activates the mechanical arm to carefully retrieve a metallic object that gleams with an inner fire despite 12,000 years of submersion. The artifact appears to be a ceremonial cup or chalice, its surface decorated with intricate patterns that seem to shift and flow in our lights. The metal has a distinctive reddish-gold hue that matches Plato's descriptions of orichalcum, the legendary alloy that was supposedly more precious than gold itself. "The preservation is extraordinary," she breathes, studying the artifact through the submersible's cameras. "There's no corrosion, no oxidation. It's as if this metal is immune to the normal processes of decay. The atomic structure must be fundamentally different from anything we know." The orichalcum chalice is covered with inscriptions in the Atlantean script, symbols that seem to glow with their own light when illuminated by our external floods. The writing appears to describe the cup's ceremonial purpose, referencing rituals and deities whose names have been lost to history. But more intriguingly, some of the symbols seem to represent mathematical formulas or scientific principles encoded in religious language. I pilot the submersible deeper into the treasury chamber, where additional artifacts emerge from the sediment like treasures from a fairy tale. There are weapons with blades that show no signs of dulling despite millennia of submersion. Jewelry incorporating gems that seem to generate their own luminescence. And, most remarkably, devices whose purpose remains completely mysterious, but whose construction suggests technological capabilities far beyond what ancient civilizations should have possessed. "Look at this," Dr. Vasquez calls out, directing my attention to what appears to be a crystalline matrix embedded in a metallic framework. The device is roughly spherical, about the size of a human head, with internal structures that seem to pulse with faint energy. It's some kind of technological artifact, but I can't even begin to guess its function. The crystal formations are unlike anything in our geological databases. The crystal device appears to be constructed from materials that don't exist in nature, synthetic compounds that suggest the Atlanteans possessed advanced chemistry and materials science. The metallic framework incorporates the mysterious orichalcum along with other alloys that show no signs of corrosion or degradation. Whatever this device was designed to do, it was built to last for millennia. As we explore the treasury, the variety and sophistication of Atlantean artifacts becomes increasingly apparent. There are tools whose cutting edges remain sharp after 12,000 years, mirrors that reflect our lights with perfect clarity despite their age, and containers that appear to be hermetically sealed using techniques that modern science struggles to replicate. The metallurgy alone represents a revolution in our understanding of ancient capabilities. These alloys shouldn't be possible with the technology we thought was available to ancient civilizations. The Atlantans must have possessed knowledge of atomic structure and chemical bonding that we're only now beginning to understand. The most intriguing artifacts are those that appear to serve technological rather than ceremonial purposes. There are devices with intricate mechanical components that suggest precision engineering capabilities. Instruments with calibrated scales and measurement markings that imply sophisticated scientific knowledge. And, most mysteriously, objects that seem to incorporate principles of physics that weren't formally discovered until the modern era. I carefully maneuver the submersible's mechanical arm to retrieve what appears to be a navigational instrument. Its bronze and orichalcum construction incorporating elements that suggest it was designed to measure celestial positions with extraordinary accuracy. The device includes what appear to be telescopic components, precision gears, and calibration mechanisms that rival modern astronomical instruments. "This is impossible," Dr. Vasquez whispers, studying the navigational device through our cameras. The precision of the mechanical components, the sophistication of the optical elements, this represents technology that shouldn't have existed until the Renaissance at the earliest. Yet here it is, crafted by Atlantean artisans thousands of years before Galileo. The treasury contains evidence of Atlantean trade networks that spanned the globe. There are artifacts made from materials that could only have originated in distant continents. Jade from Asia, obsidian from the Americas, precious stones from Africa. The Atlanteans weren't just a local Mediterranean civilization, but a global maritime empire with trade connections that wouldn't be matched until the age of exploration. Among the most remarkable discoveries are tablets made from an unknown material that appears to be neither stone nor metal, but something entirely different. The tablets are covered with Atlantean script that seems to describe scientific principles, mathematical formulas, and technological procedures. These may be the instruction manuals for Atlantean technology, the preserved knowledge of a civilization that understood principles of science that we are only now rediscovering. "Look at these equations," Dr. Vasquez says, studying one of the tablets through our high-resolution cameras. They appear to describe relationships between energy and matter that weren't formally discovered until Einstein. The Atlanteans may have possessed theoretical knowledge of physics that was thousands of years ahead of its time. The artifacts suggest that Atlantean technology was based on principles that modern science is only beginning to understand. There are devices that appear to harness energy from unknown sources, materials that exhibit properties that challenge our understanding of chemistry and physics, and instruments that suggest the Atlanteans possessed knowledge of forces and phenomena that we're still struggling to comprehend. The most mysterious artifacts are those that seem to incorporate living components, crystalline structures that appear to grow and change, metallic elements that seem to respond to external stimuli, and devices that exhibit behaviors that suggest some form of artificial intelligence or autonomous function. These artifacts challenge the very definition of technology, blurring the line between the mechanical and the biological. As we complete our survey of the treasury, the implications of what we've discovered become clear. The Atlanteans possessed technology that was not just advanced for its time, but advanced by any standard. Their understanding of material science, physics, and engineering exceeded anything achieved by subsequent civilizations until the modern era. The artifacts we've recovered represent more than just archaeological treasures. They are evidence of human potential that was achieved once and then lost. Knowledge that was possessed by an ancient civilization and then forgotten by history. The Atlanteans reached heights of technological sophistication that challenge our assumptions about the linear progression of human achievement. The submersible sample containers are filled with artifacts that will revolutionize our understanding of ancient capabilities and force us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about the development of human civilization. In the depths of the Atlantic, we have found proof that the impossible was once possible, that human ingenuity once achieved wonders that we are only now beginning to rediscover.
The submersible's lights pierce through the entrance of what can only be described as the greatest library ever constructed, its vast halls stretching into darkness beyond our illumination. I pilot the narrated through corridors lined with stone shelves that once held the accumulated knowledge of Atlantean civilization, their contents now scattered across the seafloor like the dreams of a drowned world. This is the repository where the secrets of an advanced civilization waited 12,000 years for human eyes to witness their preservation. Dr. Vasquez adjusts the external cameras to document the library's extraordinary architecture, her breath catching as the scale of the structure becomes apparent. The main hall extends for nearly a kilometer, she reports, studying the sonar readings that map the building's interior. The ceiling height reaches 40 meters in some sections. This was designed to house millions of documents, scrolls, and tablets. The preservation within the sealed sections of the library defies every expectation about underwater archaeology. Where seawater has been excluded by collapsed stone and natural sedimentation, organic materials have survived in conditions that approach perfect preservation. Scrolls made from unknown materials lie in neat rows on stone shelves, their surfaces bearing Atlantean script that remains clearly legible after millennia of darkness. I maneuver the submersible's mechanical arm to carefully retrieve what appears to be a scroll case made from the mysterious orichalcum alloy. The container is hermetically sealed using techniques that have prevented any water infiltration, its contents potentially preserved in perfect condition. The weight and balance of the case suggest it contains multiple documents of substantial length. The sealing technology is remarkable, Dr. Vasquez observes, studying the scroll case through our cameras. The joints show no signs of corrosion or degradation, and the closure mechanism appears to be based on principles we don't fully understand. The Atlanteans possessed material science that was thousands of years ahead of its time. The library's organization reveals the systematic approach that Atlantean scholars took to preserving knowledge. Different sections appear to be dedicated to specific subjects: astronomy, mathematics, engineering, medicine, and what might be natural philosophy or early science. The classification system is sophisticated, with symbols and markings that suggest a comprehensive cataloging method.
As we explore deeper into the library, we discover chambers that appear to have been dedicated to advanced studies. These rooms contain not just scrolls and tablets, but also instruments and devices that suggest the Atlanteans were conducting scientific research at levels that wouldn't be matched until the modern era. There are optical instruments that appear to be telescopes or microscopes, mechanical calculators that rival the complexity of medieval clockwork, and most remarkably, devices that seem to incorporate principles of electricity and magnetism. "Look at this," I call out, directing the submersible's lights toward what appears to be a laboratory or workshop area within the library complex. These aren't just storage areas for documents, they're research facilities where Atlantean scholars were conducting experiments and developing new technologies. The laboratory contains equipment that challenges every assumption about ancient capabilities. There are vessels made from materials that show no signs of chemical reaction despite millennia of exposure. Instruments with precision calibrations that suggest advanced understanding of measurement and standardization. And most intriguingly, devices that seem to harness and manipulate forms of energy that we're only now beginning to understand. "Look at this," I call out, directing the submersible's lights toward what appears to be a laboratory or workshop area within the library complex. The laboratory contains equipment that challenges every assumption about ancient capabilities. There are vessels made from materials that show no signs of chemical reaction despite millennia of exposure. Instruments with precision calibrations that suggest advanced understanding of measurement and standardization. And most intriguingly, devices that seem to harness and manipulate forms of energy that we are only now beginning to understand. The scrolls and tablets we're able to examine reveal the breadth of Atlantean knowledge. There are astronomical texts that describe celestial mechanics with accuracy that wasn't achieved again until Kepler and Newton. Mathematical treatises that explore concepts not formally developed until the modern era, and engineering manuals that describe construction techniques and mechanical principles that challenge contemporary understanding. One particularly remarkable document appears to be a map of the world that shows geographical features with accuracy that suggests the Atlanteans possessed global knowledge that wouldn't be matched until the age of exploration. The map includes continents and islands that weren't officially discovered by European explorers until thousands of years later, suggesting that Atlantean navigators had explored and mapped the entire planet. This changes everything we thought we knew about ancient geography, Dr. Vasquez says, studying the world map through our high-resolution cameras. The Atlanteans had detailed knowledge of continents that weren't supposed to be known to ancient civilizations. They were conducting global exploration and mapping on a scale that we didn't think was possible until the modern era. The medical texts are equally remarkable, describing surgical procedures, pharmaceutical preparations, and anatomical knowledge that suggests the Atlanteans possessed understanding of human biology that was far in advance of their contemporaries. There are descriptions of treatments and cures that seem to anticipate modern medical discoveries, along with references to healing techniques that we don't fully understand. The most mysterious documents are those that appear to describe technologies and scientific principles that we're still struggling to comprehend. There are texts that seem to discuss the manipulation of matter at the atomic level, descriptions of energy sources that don't match any known physical principles, and references to forces and phenomena that challenge our understanding of natural law. Some of these documents appear to describe technologies that we haven't developed yet, Dr. Vasquez observes, studying a tablet that contains diagrams and formulas of extraordinary complexity. The Atlanteans may have achieved levels of scientific understanding that we're only now approaching, and in some cases, that we haven't reached yet. The library contains evidence of the Atlanteans' global influence through documents written in multiple languages and scripts. There are texts that appear to be translations of Atlantean knowledge into the languages of other civilizations, suggesting that the Atlanteans served as teachers and knowledge bearers to less advanced cultures around the world. The preservation of organic materials in the sealed sections of the library provides unprecedented insight into Atlantean daily life and culture. There are personal documents, letters, and records that reveal the human side of this advanced civilization, their hopes, fears, achievements, and ultimately their awareness of the catastrophe that would destroy their world. As we prepare to leave the library, the magnitude of what we've discovered becomes clear. This is not just a collection of ancient documents, but a repository of human knowledge that was achieved once and then lost. Scientific understanding that was possessed by an ancient civilization and then forgotten by history. The Atlantean Library represents a peak of human intellectual achievement that challenges our assumptions about the linear progression of knowledge and forces us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about the capabilities of ancient civilizations. The scrolls and tablets we've recovered will require decades of study to fully understand, but they already represent the greatest archaeological discovery in human history. Proof that human knowledge has followed a more complex path than we imagined, that wisdom once achieved can be lost and must be rediscovered by each generation that seeks to understand the mysteries of existence. The submersible's lights illuminate a chamber that defies every law of physics I thought I understood, where crystalline matrices pulse with energies that have no place in the ancient world. I hover the Nereid in stunned silence before what can only be described as a power plant, not the crude mechanical systems that drove early industrial civilization, but technology that seems to harness forces that modern science is only beginning to theorize about. Dr. Vasquez stares through the porthole with the expression of someone whose worldview is crumbling and reforming in real time. "The energy readings are off the charts," she whispers, studying instruments that register electromagnetic fields, radiation signatures, and quantum fluctuations that shouldn't exist in any ancient structure. These crystals are still active after 12,000 years. They're generating power using principles we don't understand. The chamber is dominated by a series of massive crystal formations that appear to be artificially grown rather than naturally occurring. Each crystal is perfectly geometric, their faceted surfaces arranged in mathematical relationships that suggest they were designed according to principles of sacred geometry and advanced physics. The crystals pulse with internal light that cycles through spectrums visible and invisible, creating patterns that seem to respond to our presence. I maneuver the submersible closer to examine the crystal matrices, noting how they're integrated with metallic frameworks made from the mysterious orichalcum alloy. The metal appears to serve as both structural support and energy conductor, channeling the power generated by the crystals through networks that extend throughout the chamber and presumably to other parts of the city. "Look at these conduits," Dr. Vasquez calls out, pointing to channels carved into the chamber walls that contain what appear to be crystalline cables. The Atlanteans were distributing energy throughout their city using technology that we can't even classify. This isn't mechanical power or chemical energy, it's something entirely different. The technology appears to be based on principles that modern physics is only beginning to explore. The crystals seem to be manipulating quantum fields, drawing energy from sources that exist at the subatomic level. The mathematical relationships governing their arrangement suggest understanding of dimensional physics and energy-matter conversion that wouldn't be formally developed until Einstein and beyond. The control systems are equally mysterious, incorporating interfaces that seem to respond to thought as much as physical manipulation. There are panels covered with symbols that glow and shift when approached, suggesting some form of consciousness-activated technology. The Atlanteans may have developed systems that interface directly with human neural activity. "The implications are staggering," Dr. Vasquez observes, documenting the control interfaces with our cameras. If the Atlanteans possessed technology that could interface with human consciousness, it would explain their rapid advancement. They may have developed systems that could amplify human intelligence and creativity. The chamber contains evidence of the catastrophe that destroyed Atlantis, but remarkably, the crystal technology appears to have survived the destruction largely intact. Some matrices show damage from seismic activity, but the core systems continue to function, drawing power from sources that remain active despite millennia of submersion. I study the energy distribution networks, tracing conduits that lead to other parts of the city. The system appears to have powered everything from lighting and heating to transportation and manufacturing. The Atlanteans had created a technological infrastructure that provided abundant, clean energy without the environmental costs that plague modern civilization. This could revolutionize our understanding of energy production, Dr. Vasquez says, studying readings that show the crystals generating power without any apparent fuel source or waste products. If we could understand how this technology works, it could solve every energy crisis facing modern civilization.
The crystal matrices appear to be self-maintaining, with smaller crystals that seem to repair and replace damaged components automatically. This suggests that Atlantean technology was designed with sustainability principles that we're only now beginning to appreciate. Their systems were built to last for millennia without human intervention. The most remarkable discovery is a central crystal formation that appears to serve as the master control for the entire system. This crystal is larger than the others and pulses with energy patterns that seem to coordinate the activities of all the subsidiary matrices. The complexity of the energy flows suggests computational capabilities that rival modern supercomputers. The central crystal appears to be some form of artificial intelligence, I observe, studying the complex patterns of energy flow that seem to respond to external stimuli with purposeful behavior. The Atlanteans may have created conscious machines thousands of years before we developed computer technology. The chamber contains documentation systems that appear to record the operation of the crystal technology. There are displays that show energy flows, system status, and what might be historical records of the technology's development and use.
The information is presented in formats that combine visual, auditory, and possibly telepathic communication methods. Dr. Vasquez attempts to interface with one of the display systems, her touch causing symbols to appear and shift in response to her presence. The system is trying to communicate, she reports, studying patterns that seem to convey information about the technology's operation and purpose. It's as if the Atlanteans built their machines to teach future discoverers how to use them. The technology appears to have applications beyond simple power generation. Some crystal matrices seem designed for transportation, creating energy fields that could potentially manipulate gravity or inertia. Others appear to be communication systems that might have allowed instantaneous contact across vast distances. The Atlanteans may have possessed technology that made their global empire practically manageable. The most mysterious crystals are those that seem to manipulate time and space itself. These formations create distortions in our instruments that suggest they're affecting the fundamental structure of reality. The Atlanteans may have achieved understanding of physics that allows manipulation of the basic forces that govern the universe. We're looking at technology that's not just advanced, it's transcendent, Dr. Vasquez says, her voice filled with awe and uncertainty. The Atlanteans achieved capabilities that we associate with science fiction rather than historical reality. They may have reached a level of technological development that approaches what we might call godlike power. The chamber represents more than just advanced technology. It suggests that human potential can reach heights that we've barely imagined. The Atlanteans didn't just develop better tools, they appear to have transcended the normal limitations of matter and energy, creating technology that operates according to principles that challenge our understanding of what's possible. As we prepare to leave this impossible chamber, the implications of what we've discovered weigh heavily on both of us. We've found evidence of human achievement that was so far advanced that it seems almost alien. Technology that suggests our species once possessed capabilities that we're only now beginning to dream about. The crystal matrices continue their eternal pulsing, generating power and maintaining systems that have operated continuously for 12,000 years, waiting patiently for minds sophisticated enough to understand their purpose, and perhaps worthy enough to inherit their secrets. The geological evidence lies scattered across the seafloor like the broken bones of a murdered world, each fragment telling part of the story of the night when paradise drowned beneath divine wrath. I pilot the submersible through debris fields that speak of violence beyond human comprehension, where massive stone blocks lie twisted and shattered by forces that could crack continents and reshape the very foundations of the earth. Dr. Morrison, our geologist, studies the sediment cores with the grim fascination of someone reading the final chapter of a civilization's story. The geological record is unambiguous, he reports, his voice heavy with the weight of catastrophic truth. What happened here wasn't gradual subsidence or normal tectonic activity. This was a cataclysm of unprecedented magnitude, a single event that destroyed an entire civilization in hours. The evidence is written in stone and sediment with the clarity of an eyewitness account. Layers of debris show the sequence of destruction. First, earthquake, then volcanic eruption, then the massive tsunami that swept across the island like the hand of an angry god. The violence of the event is preserved in geological formations that speak of forces capable of moving mountains and draining seas. I maneuver the submersible through what appears to be a massive fissure in the seafloor, a crack in the Earth's crust that extends beyond the reach of our lights. The walls of the fissure show clear evidence of the tectonic forces that tore Atlantis apart. Rock faces sheared clean by movements that displaced entire sections of the island by hundreds of meters in minutes. "Look at these fault lines," Dr. Morrison calls out, directing my attention to fractures in the bedrock that tell the story of the Earth's violent convulsions. The displacement is enormous. Some sections of the island dropped nearly 4,000 meters in a single seismic event. The energy required for such movement would have registered as one of the most powerful earthquakes in geological history. The submersible's lights illuminate evidence of the volcanic activity that accompanied the seismic destruction. Layers of ash and pumice are embedded in the sediment, their chemical composition indicating eruptions of extraordinary violence. The volcanic debris contains materials that suggest the involvement of deep mantle processes, forces that originate in the Earth's molten core and rarely reach the surface with such devastating effect. The tsunami evidence is equally dramatic. Massive stone blocks that once formed part of Atlantean buildings have been transported kilometers from their original positions by waves that must have reached heights of hundreds of meters. The hydraulic forces required to move such massive objects speak of water movements that dwarf any tsunami in recorded history. The wave action was incredible, I observe, studying building debris that shows clear signs of hydraulic transport. These aren't just collapsed structures, they're buildings that were picked up and carried by water moving at tremendous velocity. The tsunami that hit Atlantis was unlike anything in human experience. Dr. Morrison points to sediment layers that preserve the chronology of destruction with scientific precision. The entire catastrophe unfolded over a period of less than 24 hours, he explains, studying core samples that show the sequence of geological events. Earthquake, volcanic eruption, and tsunami occurred in rapid succession, exactly as Plato described in his account of Atlantis's destruction. The evidence suggests that the catastrophe was triggered by the intersection of multiple geological processes. The island appears to have been located at the junction of several tectonic plates, making it vulnerable to seismic activity. But the scale of destruction indicates that something extraordinary occurred, a perfect storm of geological forces that combined to create devastation of biblical proportions. The submersible passes over areas where the seafloor shows evidence of massive subsidence. Entire sections of the island appear to have collapsed into underground chambers, creating sinkholes that swallowed buildings, streets, and entire neighborhoods. The collapse patterns suggest that Atlantis was built over a complex system of caves and underground spaces that made the island inherently unstable. The Atlanteans may have unknowingly built their civilization on a geological time bomb, Dr. Morrison observes, studying sonar readings that reveal the extent of underground cavities beneath the former island. Their extensive mining operations and underground construction may have weakened the island's foundation, making it vulnerable to catastrophic collapse. The volcanic evidence is particularly intriguing because it suggests the involvement of forces that operate on a global scale. The chemical composition of the ash layers indicates that the eruption drew material from deep within the Earth's mantle, suggesting that the destruction of Atlantis was connected to planetary-scale geological processes. I pilot the submersible through areas where the evidence of fire damage is still visible after 12,000 years. Stone surfaces show the characteristic discoloration of extreme heat, while metal artifacts display melting patterns that indicate temperatures far exceeding normal combustion. The Atlanteans faced not just earthquake and flood, but an inferno that consumed their city even as it sank beneath the waves. The fire damage is extensive, Dr. Morrison notes, studying thermal signatures that remain detectable in the ruins. The temperatures reached levels that suggest the involvement of volcanic processes, or possibly the ignition of unknown energy sources. The Atlanteans may have possessed technologies that became catastrophically dangerous during the destruction. The human evidence of the catastrophe is heartbreaking in its immediacy. We find skeletal remains that tell the story of people caught in the midst of their daily activities when disaster struck. Families huddled together in their final moments, individuals who died trying to save precious possessions, children whose small bones speak of lives cut short by forces beyond human control. The preservation of organic materials in some areas provides unprecedented insight into the final hours of Atlantean civilization. We find evidence that some inhabitants had warning of the impending disaster. Emergency supplies gathered in underground shelters, valuable artifacts hastily buried for safekeeping, messages carved in stone that speak of desperate attempts to preserve knowledge for future generations. They knew it was coming, Dr. Morrison says quietly, studying evidence of evacuation attempts and emergency preparations. The geological record shows preliminary seismic activity that would have served as warning signs. Some Atlanteans tried to save themselves and their civilization, but the scale of the catastrophe was beyond anything they could have prepared for. The most poignant evidence comes from the central palace, where we find what appears to be a final message carved into stone by someone who witnessed the destruction. The Atlantean script speaks of divine judgment, of a civilization that had grown too proud and powerful for the gods to tolerate. Whether this represents religious interpretation or eyewitness account, it captures the human attempt to understand catastrophe on a scale that defies comprehension. The geological evidence confirms that the destruction of Atlantis was not gradual decline, but sudden catastrophe, a single night of terror that erased the greatest civilization the ancient world had ever known. The forces involved were so powerful that they left scars in the earth itself, geological signatures that preserve the memory of humanity's greatest loss. As we survey the final evidence of destruction, the magnitude of what was lost becomes clear. Atlantis represented not just a city or even a civilization, but a peak of human achievement that took millennia to develop and was destroyed in hours. The geological record preserves the story of that destruction with scientific precision, confirming that sometimes legends tell the deepest truths about the fragility of human ambition in the face of cosmic forces. The submersible Nereid begins its slow ascent through 3 miles of crushing darkness, carrying with it proof that will forever change humanity's understanding of its own past. I watch the depth gauge slowly decrease as we rise through layers of water that separate the impossible from the accepted, the legendary from the real. In our sample containers rest artifacts that will challenge every assumption about ancient capabilities and force the world to confront the possibility that paradise once existed on Earth. Dr. Vasquez sits in contemplative silence, her hands resting on the sealed cases that contain orichalcum artifacts, crystalline technologies, and scrolls that preserve the wisdom of a civilization that touched the stars before sinking beneath divine judgment. The weight of discovery presses down on both of us more heavily than the ocean depths we're leaving behind. We have found Atlantis, but in doing so, we have also found questions that may take generations to answer. The implications are staggering, she finally whispers, her voice barely audible above the hum of life support systems. We're not just bringing back archaeological artifacts, we're carrying proof that human civilization is far older and more sophisticated than anyone imagined. The Atlanteans achieved technological capabilities that we're only now beginning to approach. The ascent takes nearly 2 hours, a journey through oceanic layers that represent different worlds of understanding. As we rise through the abyssal depths where Atlantis has waited in darkness, I feel the weight of 12,000 years of hidden history pressing against the submersible's hull. We are the first humans to witness the drowned empire since the night it vanished beneath the waves. The first to confirm that Plato's account was not philosophical allegory, but preserved memory. The evidence we carry will revolutionize archaeology, geology, and our understanding of human potential. The orichalcum alloys that show no signs of corrosion after millennia of submersion, the crystal matrices that continue to generate power using principles we don't understand, the scrolls that describe scientific knowledge that predates its supposed discovery by thousands of years, all challenge the comfortable narrative of linear technological progress. The world isn't ready for this, Dr. Vasquez observes, studying the artifacts through the submersible's internal cameras. The implications go beyond archaeology into philosophy, religion, and our fundamental understanding of human nature. If the Atlanteans achieved such heights of civilization and still fell to catastrophe, what does that say about our own future? The question haunts our ascent as we rise through the midnight zone where bioluminescent creatures create their own constellations in the eternal darkness. The Atlanteans possessed technology that could harness quantum energies, manipulate matter at the atomic level, and possibly interface directly with human consciousness. Yet for all their achievements, they could not escape the judgment that Plato claimed befell them when their civilization became corrupted by power and pride. The geological evidence we've documented tells the story of destruction on a scale that defies imagination. The forces that destroyed Atlantis were so powerful they left permanent scars in the Earth's crust, geological signatures that preserve the memory of catastrophe for those who know how to read them. Whether this destruction was natural disaster or divine intervention, it demonstrates the fragility of even the greatest human achievements. As we pass through the twilight zone, where the last traces of sunlight fade into darkness, I reflect on the human cost of Atlantis's destruction. The skeletal remains we found speak of families caught in their final moments, of individuals who died trying to save their civilization's accumulated wisdom, of children whose lives were cut short by forces beyond human control. The greatest tragedy may not be the loss of technology, but the loss of human potential.
The submersible's lights begin to detect the faint glow of surface waters, that magical boundary between the abyss and the world of air and sunlight. We are carrying more than artifacts. We are bringing back proof that human beings once achieved wonders that we're only now beginning to rediscover, that our species possesses potential that has been realized before and could be realized again. The crystal technology alone could revolutionize energy production, Dr. Vasquez says, studying readings from the power matrices we've documented. If we could understand how the Atlanteans harnessed quantum energies, it could solve every environmental crisis facing modern civilization. But do we have the wisdom to use such power responsibly? The question echoes through the submersible as we approach the surface, carrying with us the weight of knowledge that could transform the world or destroy it. The Atlanteans possessed capabilities that approached godlike power, yet they fell victim to the same human weaknesses that plague every civilization: pride, corruption, the belief that power grants immunity from consequence. The question echoes through the submersible as we approach the surface, carrying with us the weight of knowledge that could transform the world or destroy it. The Atlanteans possessed capabilities that approached godlike power, yet they fell victim to the same human weaknesses that plague every civilization: pride, corruption, the belief that power grants immunity from consequence. The research vessel Poseidon's Quest appears above us like a beacon of the modern world, its lights cutting through the surface waters to guide us home. But we are returning to a world that will never be the same, carrying proof that legends sometimes preserve deeper truths than history, that the impossible sometimes proves to be merely forgotten. The submersible breaks the surface with a gentle splash, emerging from the realm of crushing depths into the familiar world of air and sky. The Atlantic stretches endlessly in all directions, its surface giving no hint of the wonders that lie hidden in its deepest vaults. But we know the truth now. Beneath these rolling waves lies the greatest archaeological discovery in human history. The expedition team gathers on deck as the submersible is recovered, their faces reflecting the excitement and apprehension of people who understand they have witnessed history in the making. The artifacts we've recovered will require decades of study to fully understand, but they already represent proof that human achievement has followed a more complex path than anyone imagined.
Dr. Vasquez carefully transfers the sealed containers to the ship's laboratory, each one containing fragments of a civilization that was already ancient when the pyramids were built. The orichalcum artifacts gleam with their mysterious inner fire. The crystal matrices pulse with energies that modern science struggles to explain. And the scrolls wait to reveal secrets that could reshape our understanding of human potential. As the research vessel turns toward home, carrying its cargo of impossible artifacts and revolutionary implications, I stand at the stern watching the coordinates where Atlantis lies in eternal darkness. The lost city has surrendered some of its secrets, but many mysteries remain buried in the abyss, waiting for future explorers to discover and future generations to understand. The legend of Atlantis has become archaeological reality, transforming from myth into measurable truth. But in proving that paradise once existed on Earth, we have also confirmed that even the greatest civilizations are subject to forces beyond human control. That achievement and destruction walk hand in hand through the corridors of history. The Atlantic holds its remaining secrets close, but it has given us enough to know that the story of human civilization is far more complex and wonderful than we ever dared imagine. In the depths where Atlantis waits, the past and future converge, reminding us that what was once achieved can be again, and that the greatest discoveries often lie not ahead, but behind us, waiting in the darkness for minds brave enough to seek them.
The research vessel cuts through gentle swells as we sail toward home, carrying treasures that will forever change how humanity understands its past. The artifacts rest peacefully in their sealed containers, their mysteries slowly settling into the quiet rhythm of discovery made manifest. The orichalcum gleams softly in laboratory lights. The crystal matrices pulse with energies that grow gentler with each breath. The ancient scrolls whisper their secrets in languages that time has made musical rather than urgent. Feel the weight of 12,000 years lifting from your shoulders as we rise